Hello everyone, my name is Ian. Welcome to English 100, and I'm sorry that we have to meet in this way, but I'm going to do the best I can to replicate what I do in the classroom. And to that end, I want to begin with a quote from a novel written by Franz Kafka about 100 years ago, called A Judgment, in which he says this: in order to judge a case, it is necessary to be a party to the case. But if you are a party to the case, you are not entitled to judge. Therefore, judgment is only a possibility. I think that's really helpful to us because I think it captures the notion of what we mean by critical thinking. And that's what we do at university. Or at least that's what we're going to be doing in my section of English 100. So what is critical thinking? It's exactly what Kafka has just told us. It's forming judgments without being judgmental and forming opinions without being opinionated. It's questioning every first thought we have. It's questioning our beliefs, our feelings. How do we do that? Well, we make ourselves better informed about the topic. We read, we research, we go through that process. Now, it might be that at the end of it, we end back at our original position. Great, whoopee-doo, fine. But at least now we're better informed, holding that position. So what does that mean? It means that we're now better able to persuade people of our opinion. Better able to understand why people would disagree with us. And that means perhaps we're better able now to compromise, to negotiate. In my imagination, at least, there's a connection between language in this sense, understanding language in this sense, and ethics. There's a connection between critical thinking and ethics because of the arena of compromise that it opens up. I guess two things flow from this. The first is that for most of you, this is actually going to be really easy, this course. All we really do is read stuff, think about it, and then say what we feel. For example, we're going to be reading a book towards the end of the course called Cambodia. A book for people who find television too slow. It's written by Brian Fawcett. More on this in a moment. But I'm going to take you through this book and then you're going to write me an essay. Nothing to worry about. It's quite easy. I'm going to prepare you for that. My point right now is that I sincerely hope there will be 26 subtly different interpretations of the book. Otherwise I'm just going to shoot myself out of boredom when I read your essays, right? So in that sense, you're free, intellectually free to have your own opinions. In fact, why don't I even say this, and I hope you don't take it the wrong way. I don't care what you think about anything. I really don't. Why should I? It's your business. You're adults. You think what you want to think. What matters to me is the way that you think and the way that you express your thoughts. This is what I want to work on over the next 3 months, and this is what I will be testing too. The second thing that flows from this is that perhaps for one or two of you, this is actually going to be quite challenging, this course. Why? Because you are free. You're actually going to have opinions of your own. You cannot find the correct answers in the back of the book the night before the test. It's not a math course, right? It doesn't work like that. All right. Broadly speaking, what we're looking at in this course is how language is used to persuade, hopefully informed by that process of critical thinking that I've been telling you about. This is rhetoric, a word that comes from the ancient Greek Hellenic world. Rhetoric, how language is used to persuade. Here's the thing. My guess is that most of you are doing English 100 at Capilano because you have to. You don't really want to do it. In fact, I'll go further than that. My guess is that most of you right now are multitasking. You're kind of listening to this idiot on the screen. I don't know what else you're doing. Maybe you're on the bus. I get it. I totally get it. I mean, the first thing to say is tough shit, all right? That's life. We sometimes have to do things we don't want to do. It's an absolutely beautiful day right now. I'd rather be on the beach, yeah. But the second thing is this, and it may surprise you. If I do my job properly, and if you take this course seriously, then in 3 months' time, you will be better at winning arguments. I make you that promise. Okay, so that's going to be useful on a Friday night in the pub when your friend is talking complete bollocks about something. Yes, but it's more than that. It's going to mean that you're better able to persuade people. Now, a lot of you, when you end your university careers, will be out there selling stuff, all right? You're going to be selling cars or houses, financial plans, dodgy passports, drugs. I don't know. I'm going to make you a better drug dealer in 3 months' time. And I'm just realizing I'm on bloody video. So, okay, didn't mean that, all right? Not just better able to sell and persuade, but better able to compromise and negotiate, all right? I mean, that's kind of what I was saying about critical thinking. The other thing is that you're going to be better at writing academic essays, which is an important part of this course, right? So that's hopefully what you can transpose into your other courses so that English 100 is actually useful to you. This is what I want more than anything else. Okay, now I think all of this is going to be a bit clearer if we have a look at the course outline. So let's just bring that on the screen here now. First thing I want to do is go down to the schedule. So I've sent you this as an email attachment. Whether or not it's going to be on Moodle, I don't know yet, but anyway, certainly as an email attachment. So here we have the schedule. You can see week 1 here. And I want to just take you down to week 4. So basically, this course divides up into 3 sections. The first section takes us up to the first assignment. You can see there's paper 1, rhetorical analysis of an unseen text. You probably don't know what that means yet. You will do even by the end of this video. And everything we do from now until that assignment is going to prepare you for that assignment. And frankly, that is the hard work of English 100, at least in this section. This is the spade work. This is where we are actually drilling down into the sort of bits and pieces of language and looking at how different rhetorical strategies and devices are used to persuade people, to persuade a reader. Once we've done that, we will move into the second part of the course. This is when we broaden our analysis of rhetoric and start to look at how language is used to persuade in advertising, as you can see here in week 6, in politics, in the courtroom, here we are in week 8, and tangentially in literature, where persuasion is perhaps not the game so much. Everything we're doing in the second part of the course is going to prepare you for 2 assignments. First and foremost, the research assignment. So this is going to be an essay that you're going to write and hand in to me at the end of the course. I will give you a handout which will explain what I'm looking for. Nothing to worry about, plenty of time to deal with this. But just to give you the heads up, I will be giving you a choice of topics. So, for example, you can write your research essay on an advertising campaign. You can write it on political speech. You can write it on a hip-hop song for all I care. What you will be doing in the first part of your research essay is showing me how the language is being used to push the message of the song or the speech or the campaign. And then you're going to segue into an argument that you're going to make about the song, the speech, the campaign. So that will be your research essay. The second assignment that flows from what we're doing in the second part of the course is going to be a response, a 500-word response that you will write in response to one of the short stories that we will read. I don't see that being a difficult assignment. It might even be fun, because I hope that at least one of the short stories will appeal to you. Okay, so that's the second part of the course. Then we move to the third part, which is when we start studying Cambodia. This book here. So here's the good news. The only homework, pretty much the only homework in English 100 I'm going to give you is to read this bloody book. All right, you can get it from the university bookstore. Here we are. In fact, these are the two texts you're going to need. This is the 2016 edition. You're going to get the latest edition from the bookstore, and then you're going to get this. Nice, reasonable, friendly guy that I am, not a problem in your life in this course. I will be a big problem in your life if you tell me at the beginning of November that you don't have this. All right? So no excuses. Make sure you get it, and make sure you read it before we get to, let's have a look, week 10. So you've got plenty of time, okay? Just a couple of comments about Cambodia now that I actually have it in my hand. When you buy the book, you're going to see that it's got a line at the sort of 2/3 of the way down every page. Can you see that? Hopefully you can see that now. The reason is that it's actually two books in one. So you've got 13 short stories, fiction, running across the top. And then below the line you have 11 socio-historical political essays. They all connect up, of course they do. And it's my job to show you how they all connect up so you can write about it in your final assignment here in week 12. So don't worry about that. But the reason I'm telling you it now is so that you don't try and read from the top of the page to the bottom, right? You can't do it. It's going to blow your mind. So how do you read this book? What you do is you go to the first story, which is called On the Difficulties of Crowd Control. Okay, read the first story. And then when you finish reading the first story, go back and read the first essay. Okay, read the first essay. And then go up, read the second story. Finish, go back, read the second essay. That's how I suggest you read it. One other thing, now that I've got this again in my hands, when you look at my book, I mean, holy crap, I mean, it's falling apart. It's just covered in shit, right? It's just covered in comments. All of my books are. And that's what I think you should be doing at university. I don't think you should be reading anything without a pencil in your hand making notes, unless you have a photographic memory, in which case, whoopee-doo. I know I don't. But otherwise, just think you're going to be wasting your time. And this is where technology doesn't help you. Because you're scrolling through some kind of academic article or whatever. How the hell are you going to remember anything? And you need to, because when you write your essay, not just in English, you're going to need to bring quotes into your essay and statistics. How will you remember this stuff? So what I suggest, and I would begin with this book, Cambodia, is that when you're reading it, just mark anything you think is significant or important on that page. Maybe there's nothing, but if there is, just mark it. If you think it's a really good point, tick. If you think it's a really, really good point, tick, tick. If you're confused, and remember, it may not be your fault that you're confused, put a question mark. If you think the guy's a bloody idiot, then write, you're a bloody idiot. right? Just work the book, annotate it, and then when you come back to it, you can reread it very quickly and just draw stuff from it very quickly. I'm surrounded by books here in my little library at home. I have a memory like a sieve, right? It's terrible. But I can take any of these books off the shelf and reread them in about 20 minutes because when I read them, I went through this process. Okay, well, that's your business, but I thought I'd mention that. Okay, hang on a second. Okay, I'm back. I had to go because my son was asking about what we're having for dinner tonight. I mean, for God's sake, it's only 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And these are the little local difficulties one has doing a video at home. All right, okay, so now we have the evaluation profile in front of us on the screen here. So you can see how this is going to work, all right? You can see how we arrive at 100%. Nearly all of these assignments you're going to be sending me as Word documents or PDF documents to my email. Just below here, we've got a thing about English usage. Sounds a bit scary, doesn't it? Students are expected to proofread all written work for any grammatical, spelling, and stylistic errors. Instructors may deduct marks for incorrect grammar and spelling in written assignments. So, I am not a grammar Nazi, but this stuff matters. So we need to be aware of that and working on that. Now, this course actually assumes that you can all write grammatically correct sentences in English, string them together in coherent paragraphs. In my experience, I find that to be a presumption. Nearly all my students need help with this, and so I will try to give you some help. As we go through the course, there will be a little bit of stuff that we do on grammar, and certainly on paragraph coherence. Okay, let's just go back to the top here and have a look. You have my name, you have my email, which is very important. That's how we're going to interact with each other one-to-one, okay? The videos that I'm doing will be put onto Moodle. You know that, of course, because that's where you are right now, okay? But that's where they're going to be. I will be sending you texts, probably by email. They may be on Moodle, I don't know about that yet. And I think that's pretty much all I have to say. This thing about office hours, I mean, normally at campus we would meet, right? I would have, office hours during the week. So what I'm going to do is simply make myself available throughout every weekday to respond to your emails. So I will endeavor to check my emails several times every day. So hopefully I can get back to you quite quickly in that way. If you feel a desperate need for us to FaceTime one-to-one, yeah, sure, we can do that. Just email me and I'll send you my Viber number or whatever, and we can do that if we absolutely have to. That's fine, whatever, we can sort that out. In a more general sense, I treat you like adults, of course I do, right? So I do not mother hen you. I almost don't care whether you pass or fail. Again, don't be offended. It's your business. But I am here to help you as best I can, particularly in this online environment. So yeah, drop me a line if you need help, if you've got a problem, just run it past me. I'm not going to be a problem in your life unless I detect rudeness or you're simply not doing what's needed. All right? I have other rules in the classroom. Can you believe I tell all my students that they can't use electronic devices in the classroom? Well, that's gone out the window. I also tell all my students that they have to turn up to class. So you're probably watching this in bed right now. And great, whatever works. So we'll get through this as best we can. Okay, enough of that. What I do next in the classroom is a debate. Something that you're all kind of used to doing at high school or wherever. So I split the class in two and, we debate emotion. The last time I did this, it was we must all stop eating meat and fish. It's partly just to help us get to know each other, so that doesn't really work today for us. But there's actually another reason why I do this, and it connects to rhetoric and what we're going to do with rhetoric and the law a bit later. It's what's called refutatio. So the idea here is basically a 3-step process. Step number 1, what do I think about the topic? Step number 2, what is my opponent going to say in response to that? In other words, what's the counter argument? Step number 3, how will I deal with the counter argument? The more you get used to thinking like this, the more you practice thinking like this, the better you will be at argument. Why? Because you're ready for what's going to come down the track, ready to respond to it. So that's basically what I ask my students to be thinking about as they are going through the process of creating arguments for or against eating meat and fish. It usually turns into a shouting match, which is great. And the interesting thing is that particularly when we get into the ethics, it's a very touchy and difficult subject. It's usually what transpires in the classroom. You know, you think of a cuddly little lamb. Why do we have the right to kill it so as just to gratify ourselves, our appetites? Difficult, right? Difficult. And of course there are arguments in both ways, and you know, it's not so easy to just wipe the board and say, okay, well, everybody just has to stop. I mean, what about Inuit up north? People who depend upon meat and fish. It's actually a really difficult topic, and that's what I actually try to get people to comprehend as we're working this debate. The funny thing is that at the end of the debate, I ask how many people in the room are actually vegetarian or vegan, and usually it's just 2 or 3 people. And a lot of people are just kind of scratching themselves thinking, well, you know what, maybe I should rethink this. Me, I confess to being a meat eater. I love the taste of meat, but that doesn't mean to say that I don't feel guilty about it at times. And I think really this captures what it's like to be a critical thinker in many ways. It makes life awkward at times because you find yourself questioning your own beliefs and questioning what it is that you want to do. Difficult at times. Okay, well, I want to move on from that because it's not really going to work for us here online, is it? So the next thing I want to do, in fact, the last thing I want to do in this video is start prepping you for a rhetorical analysis. And we do that in the classroom by reading a text. So that's what I want you to do right now. Let me just bring it up for you here on the screen. So here we have a letter from Birmingham Jail, written in 1963 by Martin Luther King. This is in your email box, and what I want you to do right now, please, as if we were in the classroom, is to read up to paragraph 16. So that might take you 15-20 minutes. I'm going to let you do that right now. Pause while I go and have a pee, and come back and meet up again with you when you've done it. Okay? Right, welcome back everyone. When you come in, what am I saying? When you do your first assignment, which I think is at the end of week 4, I will be sending to you a text that you've never seen before. It's shorter than this one, and maybe a bit easier to read. And you will then write a rhetorical analysis going through the 3 steps that I'm now putting on the screen for you. So, step number 1, what is the message? What is the writer arguing for or against? Step number 2, how does the language of the text communicate the message? That actually constitutes the main body of the rhetorical analysis. That's step 2. So we need to do 2 things. We need to look for rhetorical strategies, and we need to look for rhetorical devices. More on those 2 in a moment. And then when we've done that, step 3 is the critique. What do we actually think ourselves about what the writer is arguing for or against? Do we agree? Do we disagree? What's our position? Are there weaknesses in the argument? And there may be, even if we agree with it. And that's the point at which we might start talking about fallacies. Fallacies are weaknesses of argument. And I'll be doing a video on that down the track. So that's it. That's the structure of a rhetorical analysis. In the next video, I will take you to an analysis that I've written myself of this text by Martin Luther King. And that will be the first of 3 samples that you have, showing you exactly what we're looking for when you do that assignment. Okay? For the rest of this video, I just want to talk through how we might sort of begin this, how we might go through this. So let's begin with step 1 and ask ourselves, what is the message here? What is Martin Luther King arguing for or against? Now, when I'm in the classroom and I ask that question, I tend to get initially very general responses, which is fine. In fact, that's actually a good way of dealing with this step 1. Think about it in general terms and then specific, just in that kind of way. So in general terms, you're absolutely right. Exactly what you're thinking now. He's arguing against racism. He's arguing against segregation. He's arguing against unjust laws. Anything like that is correct. It's exactly what he's arguing for or against. More specifically, though, he's arguing for non-violent protest. I hope you picked that up as you were reading through. Some of you may know non-violent protest as civil disobedience. So that's the mode or method of practice that he's advancing here. Okay, so we kind of sketched down an answer to step 1. We'll come back to this later. But let's look now at step 2. How does the language of the text communicate the argument, the message? Let's look at the very beginning. Why don't I bring this on the screen now for us? Okay. While confined here in the Birmingham City Jail. Why does he begin like that? What do you think? I mean, he didn't have to, right? He could have begun this letter any number of ways, but he begins it by stating, while confined here in the Birmingham City Jail. Why? I think there's a better way of putting my question, actually. It's, what feeling does he want you, the reader, to have when he writes that? Now, I ask that to my students in the classroom, and eventually somebody says they want us to feel sorry for him, or at least appreciation, empathy. And yes, absolutely. This, in fact, takes us to the first of 3 rhetorical strategies, which we call pathos. Pathos is where the writer or the speaker elicits sympathy or empathy in the reader or the listener. It's very important in argument. I mean, that's why I was briefly mentioning the cuddly little lamb that, that we're about to kill so as to eat it. You create this kind of emotional connection as an important part of advancing your argument. This is pathos. But it's not the only reason why he begins like this. While confined here in the Birmingham City Jail is telling us something else about him. It's telling us that he's committed, passionate, in fact so committed to the cause that he's prepared to sacrifice his own well-being in service of the cause. And this takes us to the second of 3 rhetorical strategies, which is called ethos. Ethos is where the writer or the speaker establishes their credentials, their credibility. I mean, think about it. Why the hell are you suffering through this video? God knows, I know you must be suffering. I'm sorry, but why? Unless you just assume that I kind of know what I'm talking about because I've studied and researched and I've got these qualifications. That's my credibility for sitting in here and saying this stuff. But if you had a pain in your stomach, you certainly wouldn't be listening to this idiot, right? You would go to a doctor. It's actually really important when we think about rhetoric, argument, and persuasion that at some point we establish our authority, our credibility. So, okay, how do you do that as a student at Capilano? Simple. Back page of your research essay is going to be a works cited page in which you list all those academic articles and books, whatever, that you've read, so as to make yourself informed as a critical reader and thinker, so as to advance the case in your research paper. That's your credibility, that's your ethos. And so it is that, believe it or not, even in English 100, reading research essays, sometimes I learn stuff. It's actually one of the best things about being an instructor. It gets better as you go second, third, fourth year. Of course it does, postgraduate. But even at this level, you can teach me stuff. I love that. Okay, the third of the three strategies is logos. I'm going to talk more about logos in later videos, but logos is basically where we argue from our knowledge and observation of the world. It's sort of rational argument, logical argument. And where we have a problem with that, we arrive at fallacies. As I've mentioned, I'm going to talk to you about that down the track. So those are the three rhetorical strategies that Aristotle gives us from the ancient world, and which is still so useful to us today in actually deconstructing and figuring out what's going on in a text. And also when it comes to actually using text ourselves to persuade, or language to persuade. Okay, the second thing we have to look at is the rhetorical devices. These are the kind of little nuts and bolts of language that push, drive one or more of the three strategies. Let's just look again at the first paragraph. I'm not going to go through every paragraph in detail. Don't worry, we're going to be done with this in about 10 minutes. But look at this. He says, but since I feel that you are men of genuine goodwill and that your criticisms are sincerely set forth. He didn't have to say that at all, but he does. Why? The simple word, maybe it's not entirely accurate in this case, but the simple word I want to use is flattery. Flattery is a rhetorical device. You all use it, and it always works, if you use it judiciously. It works, and it's actually a really important rhetorical device because it confers respect and appreciation on your interlocutor, the person you're talking to or the person you're writing to, on your opponent. That's what he's doing here. It's an important part of creating a ground, a field for negotiation, compromise, and argument. The more antagonistic we are in the way that we talk, in the way that we push our position, the less likely we are to persuade. I mean, that's bleeding obvious, isn't it? But anyway, we know this and we should understand it. There are so many rhetorical devices when we push through this text. And I'm going to give you a handout down the track which will give you a list of rhetorical devices. But let's look at this one. So we've got paragraph 2. I don't know about you, but I find paragraph 2 pretty boring to read. It's pretty dry, you know. It's an important paragraph, I think, because it's an ethos paragraph. This is where Martin Luther King is establishing his credentials. I mean, he's in jail, but not only that, he belongs to this league. He's been to this conference. He's been invited here. He's done this. He's establishing his credibility in paragraph 2, but I think because he's so smart and clever with language, he knows it's dry and boring. So look what he does at the beginning of paragraph 3. But basically, I'm in Birmingham because injustice is here. And we have this dramatic shift of tone. We call this a hook. It's quite simple. It's a rhetorical device, a dramatic shift in tone, something that just wakes up the reader, alerts them, and keeps them involved in the text. You need to write with hooks in your academic writing. How do you do that? There's one simple answer. Use a question mark. If you start dropping provocative questions and then answering them, the rhetorical question, in your own essay writing, this is how you will keep your instructor alert and involved in the text. Okay, we get to the big one, number 4. Look at this. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Do you know what rhetorical device is being used here? Perhaps you do. The answer is metaphor. And metaphor is so fundamental to what we're going to do over the next 3 months. I could even title this course, English 100 Metaphor. You are going to be sick of how often I talk to you about metaphor. This book is all about metaphor. So what is metaphor? The Oxford English Dictionary definition of metaphor is the use of a descriptive word or phrase applied to an object in an imaginative way. That's what a metaphor is. So as an example, you could say, he is a pig. It's not very nice, is it? But anyway. And then if I were to say he is like a pig, then I'm sure you know that's a simile, okay? And there are lots of different species of metaphor. We can talk about synecdoche and metonymy and personification. I'm going to help you with that in the next video or the one after. And there are technical terms that we can use to forensically examine how metaphors are constructed. We can talk about the tenor and the vehicle. Yeah, look, don't worry, we're going to deal with that. It's not a problem. But in a more general sort of introductory sense, why? Why write in metaphors? It doesn't have to. I mean, a simple answer is that you can't actually have an emotion without talking in metaphor or simile. We'll come to that later. But what is happening here is that he's almost compelling us into the text, to be involved in the text. I mean, you can gloss over this and read on without even thinking about it, yes, but not here, not at university. Here we actually have to figure out what he means by a garment of destiny. It's like a puzzle, right? So it involves us in the text. Let's just think about this for a second. I mean, what is a garment? A garment is a piece of clothing. So what the hell is he talking about a piece of clothing for when he's talking more generally about justice and being together and mutuality? Well, this is where we have to kind of run with the ball, to use a metaphor. It's where we have to kind of explore connections. One simple image, I suppose, is that we all wear clothes. We all wear garments. Doesn't matter what ethnicity or race we are, we wear that. So that's one way in which we're all tied, braided together in that sense. I think it's more than that, though. Just look at what you're wearing now, assuming you're not stark naked in the shower or something. God help us. I mean, look, right? So this is, even I can see this is threaded, braided together. And we have this idea of interconnectedness in the threads that create garments. It might be somebody's just ringing the bell. Just give me a break. Sorry about that. Yeah, so it might be that you happen to be wearing a leather jacket or something. So what is that made out of? It's made out of skin. So you can see how he's just creating image after image after image. implicating us in the text and drawing pictures here. That's what metaphors do, but they do something else really important. They create mood, ambience, tone. My guess is that none of you right now watching this video are laughing. I mean, unless you're laughing at me, which is absolutely fine. But you're not laughing at this text because he's not letting you do that. We will read text down the track which will make you smile or laugh because of the metaphors it's using. But just think about this. Let's look at the metaphors here. I'm going to take you to one on paragraph 8. Scribbled it down in my book. Okay, yeah, this one here. The beginning of paragraph 8. Our hopes had been blasted. That is a metaphor. We have another one on paragraph 10. Yes, you can see towards the end of paragraph 10, he's writing about a bondage of myths and half-truths. This is a metaphor. We have another one on paragraph 13. A disease of segregation. Do you see? Disease is here, segregation is here. Put the two together, got yourself a metaphor. Paragraph 14. Yes, halfway through, paragraph 14, we have ominous clouds of inferiority. So it's another metaphor. The metaphors in this text are creating a dark mental landscape. That's why you're not smiling or laughing. And what they're doing is driving or creating pathos. That strategy I referred to about 10 minutes ago. He's appealing to you primarily in terms of pathos. He's appealing to your emotions. He wants you angry. He wants you upset. He wants you empathizing and sympathizing with this little girl he talks about in paragraph 14. But it's the metaphors that are creating that. I hope you understand that. They're creating that mood, that ambience. In paragraph 14, we have another rhetorical device, which is called anaphora. So anaphora is repetition of a phrase. And like most species of repetition in text or language, it takes us somewhere important. Most of you have studied Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, okay? And it's like you all do that in high school. That's a very good example of anaphora. It's where he repeats I have a dream over and over again, but towards a climax. Those of you who are musicians, you don't have to be a musician. You will know about crescendo. This is where, you know, the music gets louder and louder and louder towards a climax. The rhetorical equivalent of that is amplificatio, and that's created in this case by anaphora. Look at this in paragraph 14. He repeats over and over again, when you. I mean, you can actually hear him, increasing his voice, and then we get the climax 3 or 4 lines from the end. Then you will understand why we find it difficult to wait. And the climax here has been created by the anaphora. Okay, plenty more we can say about the rhetorical devices. I don't want to do that right now. And like I said, I'm going to give you, next time we meet, my own analysis of this text. What I want to do really for the last few minutes in this video is to explore the critique. Step 3, if you remember. Now, how the hell can I disagree with Martin Luther King and keep my job? Yeah. Well, we don't need to do that. I mean, I imagine we all kind of agree with the general message here. We're all kind of against racism. We're all against segregation. we all want just laws. I mean, we're all going to agree in that sense. But do you remember when we looked at the first step and the message? We looked not just at the general thing, but also the specific and particular. And the specific and particular thing he's arguing for is non-violent protest, civil disobedience. That's interesting. Do we have to agree that that is the right approach to obtain social justice? Civil disobedience is tricky. If we weigh up the arguments and the counter-arguments, which is what I ask my students to do in the classroom, what are the arguments against non-violent protest? And as somebody nearly always says, well, it can very quickly turn violent. Yes, we know this throughout history. It can backfire. It sometimes doesn't work. We can drill down a bit further and find problems with it. For example, imagine we're in the classroom right now, in Birch on the 3rd floor. I mean, in my usual melodramatic way, I stand in front of the door with my arms folded and I say to everybody, I've got a problem with my salary at Capilano. It's not true, I don't at all, but imagine that I do. And in non-violent protest, I'm standing here in front of the door. Now, you all want to leave the classroom because you can't stand this idiot talking to you anymore and you're desperate to eat or whatever. You want to get out, and you can't jump 3 floors. So you're going to have to move me. But you so much as touch me without my consent, and that's an assault. Technically, it's a battery. So that's a problem, isn't it? Because you're probably sitting in the class and thinking, well, bloody hell, I don't give a shit about this guy's salary. I just want to leave this room. So there's a problem with civil disobedience. But I now, as a critical thinker, have to imagine that Martin Luther King is sitting in the classroom. And what would he say to me in response to my little performance in front of the door? What would he say to me? Well, I think what he would say to me is, Ian, that's all very well, but what I'm talking about here is way more important than your little salary problem. What's important here affects all of us profoundly, and we are all implicated. So here we have argument, counter-argument, and I'm trying to get you to practice doing that. The last thing I want to take you to here is at the beginning of paragraph 16. He's talking about just laws and unjust laws. And he asks a rhetorical question at the beginning of paragraph 16. What is the difference between the two? And now he answers his own question. That's a rhetorical question. Listen to this. A just law is a man-made code that squares with the moral law or the law of God. Now, as critical thinkers and critical readers, what's the problem with that statement? Problem is, who's God? Is there a God? What do you do if you don't believe in a God? That statement could be used by any terrorist of any religious persuasion to justify their acts. Malcolm X had a sort of fundamental disagreement with Martin Luther King, especially about non-violent protest. That Malcolm X's position was that if our rights are infringed, then we have the right to act. We have rights which are inalienable. That means they cannot be taken from us. And anybody who does try to take them from us, yes, we take to the streets. And yes, we are violent if we need to be. That was Malcolm X's position. So, okay, you say to Malcolm X, that's great. So where do these rights come from? Because it's great to know that we have these rights. Yeah, but where do they come from? And he says, well, they come from God. And we're back to the same problem. This is what I want you to take away from this video, more than anything else. Martin Luther King is working you over like a skilled boxer, to use a simile. That's what he's doing. He's that good. And I want you to be aware of it. I want you to be aware of when that's happening to you as a listener or a reader. Not that it will put you off his main argument, but just so that you're aware of how you are being maneuvered rhetorically. And the more aware of that you are, the more you can start doing it yourself when you start advancing your arguments in text or in speech. Okay, that's it. Off to the beach, yeah? So I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.